Ahoy, everyone. This is David Perry with my continuing series of video online TV interviews, as I call them, with friends and colleagues around the world, talking about how we go from the great pause of COVID into the great return. And I'm very happy and proud to have with me someone who knows all about small business and is one of the most connected people that I've ever met, with a Rolodex that defies description. Please welcome Paul Pendergast. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hi, David. Thanks. Glad to be here and glad to be a part of your fantastic vision here. So thanks.
Yes. So for the three people who are not on your Rolodex, tell us about how you came to California and how you started your career. And then afterwards, we're going to talk about BuildOUT CA, your next great venture.
Okay. Well, the great story is I hail originally from the great state of Wisconsin. So grew up in a very small town of 30,000 people. And of all things, cycled through a number of degrees and ended up with several degrees in music and performance. And the reason why I came to San Francisco is because I actually sang with the San Francisco Opera for several years. So, of course, I'm very much a lover of the arts, and I think you and I share that in common. And when I was 29, I realized, I'm good, but I'm never going to be Pavarotti. So I said I didn't want to wake up when I was 39 and realized I should have started my business career 10 years ago. So bottom line, started with kind of like every other entrepreneur does. You start dialing the phone and try to find people who will kind of pick up your services. And, very lucky in my, journey, the first people to hire my firm was Nestle Beverage Company, which used to be located here in San Francisco. And I always said it was always like working with Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It was a magical place. And from there, it's just been one exciting chapter after another.
I had forgotten we both started in the arts. My degree was in theater and voice as well. And I, at some point, had a revelation. I realized I was better off stage, or I should say backstage, than on stage. And my first job in San Francisco was at San Francisco Opera, as you know, doing advertising. So arts people become good marketers.
Yeah, because I knew we knew some of the same people in common, and there was, that was just, amazing people at the opera at the same time that you were there. So, we had the earthquake to deal with and all those extra items, but it was an exciting time here in San Francisco.
It was. Certainly, I've always said that if you work or are connected with San Francisco Opera, especially during the 80s and 90s when you and I were, at some point, everybody who was somebody or wanted to be somebody or somebody who you just should know came to the doors of San Francisco Opera.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what exactly is your work passion? I mean, you have turned that large Rolodex and that great personality into a career. Pendergast Consulting. What does Pendergast Consulting do?
So we are a public affairs firm. And one of the ways that we differentiated ourselves from all the other great public affairs firms here in the Bay Area in California, our specific wheelhouse is in community engagement and economic development programs for mega infrastructure projects. Transbay Transit Center, the Doyle Drive, which is the south approach to the Golden Gate Bridge, the Bay Bridge, California High-Speed Rail. So people will hire our firms, which are generally government agencies or very large international contractors, to manage their engagement, outreach, and their small business participation programs.
Right. Now, last year, the San Francisco Business Times, I believe they called you the up-and-coming gay entrepreneur of the year or something. They gave you some incredible award. I think it had everything except a sash. What was that?
Well, I really love the sash. I think I would have looked good on the sash.
Yeah.
The incredible Mary Huss. Let's just start right there, because Mary is truly one of the most amazing publishers in the entire country, who really has her finger on the pulse of business in general. But she's always been a champion of being inclusive. And literally back in 1994, she and I started talking about doing something called the Business of Pride issue, that the Business Times would highlight LGBT entrepreneurs, people in corporations, and so forth. And we actually had, the timing wasn't right. So kind of fast forward 20 years, Mary and her team have launched this amazingly empowering, it becomes a whole issue in June called the Business of Pride. They choose 12 outstanding voices. And then she also does now the only list of the top 50 LGBT-owned businesses, which is based on revenue. And she publishes that so that it really starts to showcase the important role that LGBT businesses play within the overall marketplace. And as you know, David, from your time with the San Francisco Partnership and the San Francisco Chamber, how interwoven the community is in regards to the overall fabric. You know, we can't do without them, they can't do without us, and we truly are in so many ways vital to what's going on with the California and national economy.
Well, and that leads me into my segue about something that you started just this year. I mean, my goodness, what about starting a new initiative during the worst pandemic in 102 years, right? I mean, you really like a challenge. Talk to us about BuildOUT California, which has just started and is already having an incredible impact, being talked about in Governor Newsom's office. Just the other day, one of your founding members, the great small business person, Gwen Kaplan, had a one-on-one with one-time presidential candidate, Tom Steyer. You really are using your Rolodex to open doors for the LGBTQ business community and its allies. So what is BuildOUT California?
Well, I like to use the words that my good friend, Helen Russell, who's the CEO of Equator Coffees, like she said, Equator Coffees was a 25-year overnight success. I really believe that BuildOUT California, which is the world's first industry association dedicated to the economic empowerment and sustainable development of LGBT and allied firms in the areas of construction, architecture, engineering, real estate development, and related services. It is now our time in California specifically to step forward and become more involved as a community and as qualified businesses to start engaging with very large contractors, government agencies, public utilities. But up until this point, a lot of the qualified LGBT firms who, you know, and let's just be honest, construction is not the most friendly and inclusive environments. We know that, you know, minority participation, women participation in construction projects lags far behind where it should. So after spending 20 years in that space, working with, you know, Caltrans, all the different departments that deal with major infrastructure, I realized, and some of my colleagues also realized, that the LGBT community was simply missing. We were not at the table, and therefore there was no way for us to really begin our competitive advantage to kind of, you know, compete in the marketplace for these larger contracts. So basically back in 2014, Rick Hobbs Seeley, who used to be the procurement director at Southern California Gas, he and I founded something called Assembly Bill 1678. And that law was signed into place by then Governor Jerry Brown. And for the first time in history of the United States, it actually codified that LGBT businesses needed to be a part of the procurement process for all the California utilities. PG&E, Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, AT&T. They then, after the passage of that measure, started to include our businesses. But like we know, it's never good enough just to be invited to the table, but you really have to be competitive in the marketplace. You have to be the best. You have to have the best value, the best prices, the best experience, because, you know, you might be invited to the table, but, you know, if you can't compete on those elements, you're not going to win the opportunities. So that's why BuildOUT California really began.
Now, you say that now is the time. Why was this moment, 2020, the time? And was this something that came because of COVID or despite COVID?
So the real essence of why BuildOUT California was needed really started about 2 years ago, when we started to realize that in order for us to get LGBT businesses who are in construction to step forward, they needed an environment that they were used to operating in. They needed an organization that would be just as good as the Construction Management Association of America, the Association of General Contractors, and BuildOUT. We're not a chamber of commerce. We are an industry association that has a really bright focus on those areas. So COVID happened in the middle of our launch, and people did say, like you mentioned, they thought we were a little bit crazy launching at this incredible time, but I really think it added to our excitement and our engagement because, as we all know, either you pivot or you basically become irrelevant. So BuildOUT actually used the opportunity to really step to the forefront with an innovative approach that is really resonating with our core folks. In fact, I just had this great conversation yesterday with a steel metal fabricator who he's going to be becoming the CEO of his father's company in just a year or so, and he will become the first LGBT-owned steel fabrication business in the United States. And he just happens to be located here in San Francisco. Worked with him for years, didn't know he was a part of the community. He's bold, he's bright. He is going to really help break down a lot of those barriers. So, COVID is here. We've got to pivot and innovate. So I think, this will become part of our very exciting chapter of our launch.
So maybe your new tagline should be, "We're here, we're queer, we build things."
Well, and we do. I mean, and let's just be honest. California is the world's 5th largest economy. There is so much business here that not only are we the trendsetters, so let's just say it starts here and then it kind of rolls out across the country and the world. And let me just be honest, the modern day economic equality movement for the LGBT community did start here in San Francisco in 1974 with the founding of the GGBA. So what a better place to start BuildOUT California, where we embrace, this world's major economy.
Right, and of course, you mentioned the GGBA, the Golden Gate Business Association, the world's first gay chamber, and you for many years were on their board and very involved. So now in the 3rd month of BuildOUT California, what's been the response? Well,
I'm a business person, so I like metrics. So one of the things that just warms my heart is we actually work with this amazing media agency that really started to get us hooked up and engaged with our LinkedIn audience. So again, we're all stuck in our homes and our offices, can't get out, can't network, can't do events. So the perfect solution is engage with our social media platforms. In 1 month, we actually have engaged 551 new followers to BuildOUT platforms. And, like you said earlier, I have a good Rolodex, but the people who are coming to start to follow what BuildOUT is doing are from Boeing. They're from the very international architecture, engineering firms, Disney. I mean, all these different people who, we had no idea that they were so ready for this level of inclusion. Now we need to identify and build the number of firms that can fill the pipeline that we're creating.
In our last few moments, talk to me about what you see going forward in the next few months. I was on a Zoom the other day, which has become, of course, the verb of 2020, and someone was talking about it's difficult doing 90-day planning this year, and I chimed in and said it's hard doing 90-minute planning. Yeah. How do you see us getting out of this and beyond as small business people? And you've had a lot of experience advocating on behalf of the small business community for many years at the highest levels. What do you see coming forward, and are you optimistic in our closing moments?
So, thankfully, we are here in California. We have very strong leadership at the government levels who are basing their decisions on science, and they are making very solid recommendations. I personally am worried about the next 90 days. I'm hopeful that things can level off and that we kind of stop the backslide. But I'm very worried for California small businesses, especially any business which has to deal with face-to-face interactions. And let's just say, let's include if you are a electrical supply company where your business is dealing with contractors face-to-face to buy the wire, the conduit, and all those things. Well, they're a major part of the construction community, and chances are your sales are probably at about 40% of what they should be, which you can, maybe you can kind of survive 1 month or 2 months of 40% sales, but let's be honest, this doesn't really see any short-term end of this. So I am worried about our small businesses overall, all flavors, all types of businesses. But I think California is focused on innovation. We must be focused on helping our brothers and sisters within our community into the larger community. And that's why I think something like BuildOUT is great. It's like what you're doing here with Ahoy. It's offering people hope, some ideas, and a path forward. Because if we're to call ourselves community leaders, we better darn well be doing that.
Well, Paul, you certainly have done it for many years. It's a great pleasure to speak with you, always an honor. I look forward to the day when we can raise a glass, not just, with an elbow bump, but we'll pull up to, well, what's your favorite bar in San Francisco?
Well, I'm a fan of Epic.
Yeah.
I love the name. And number two, the location. And I just think that, we're just so blessed to live here in the Bay Area and in California. So I can't wait. So first drink is on me, that's for sure, David.
And the second drink will be on me at the Epic Roadhouse. We've been speaking to Paul Pendergast, business person, entrepreneur, advocate for small business, and the founder of BuildOUT California. Ahoy.